Hello students, I am Dr. Saliha Jamal from Department of Geography, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Welcome back to the today's class. Today we are going to discuss a very important and interesting topic, that is greenhouse gases and what are their role. As we are dealing with the course climate change, vulnerability and adaptation, so how could we forget to discuss the greenhouse gases and their role? So let's start. Greenhouse gases. Actually, the greenhouse gases are the gases in the Earth's atmosphere which trap heat and contribute to the greenhouse effect. The simple process here I can make you to understand that Earth is heated by the sunlight. The incoming rays are the short waves which the Earth receives from the sun to the earth surface, and when it reflects back, this energy is heat is reflected back from the earth surface, that becomes the long waves. So actually the gases, few of the gases that is regarded as the greenhouse gas like carbon dioxide, methane, so these gases present in the atmosphere, they are somewhat transparent for these short waves coming from the sun, but they are not transparent for the long waves which is reflected back by the earth's surface. So they generally trap this reflected heat energy for the longer duration in the atmosphere, thus rising the earth temperature, that is known as global warming. So simply you can understand what are the role of greenhouses and how it rises the global temperature. So let's start. Greenhouse gas are generally the gases which in the Earth's atmosphere that trap heat and contribute to the greenhouse effect. They are distinguished from the other gases on the basis that they absorb the wavelength of the radiations. What I have taught, generally they are somewhat transparent for the incoming short waves that is received from the sun, but they are not transparent for the long waves that is reflected from the earth's surface, thus making the earth's atmosphere warm. So generally the earth is warmed by the sunlight, causing its surface to radiate heat, which is then mostly observed by the greenhouse gases. So three things you have to remember here, that earth is warmed by the sunlight. Then when earth is warmed by the sunlight, then what happened? The earth's surface will radiate heat, and this radiated heat will be absorbed by the greenhouse gases. So warming of earth by sunlight, then we can say radiation of heat from the earth's surface, then absorption of this heat by the greenhouse gases. The result is rise in temperature of the atmosphere that will lead to global warming. If just think that the average temperature of our earth is 15 degrees centigrade. What would happen if there would be no greenhouse gas? You must be thinking that greenhouse gases are very much responsible for the climate change, so it's better that there should be no greenhouse gas. It's not like that, students. If there would be no greenhouse gas, without greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the average temperature of the earth's surface would be about minus 18 degrees centigrade, which is very much uncomfortable, non-conducive for the human settlements and several life forms. So greenhouse gas has a positive role, but when balance is disturbed, then it can also play a negative role by rising the global temperature. So this is one of the just diagrammatic representation. You can say the earth is warmed generally by the sunlight, and these are the greenhouse gases. Here you can say water vapor, methane, carbon dioxide. Some of the light is scattered in the atmosphere by the clouds, by the gases, particles present in the atmosphere, and then finally when it is received by the earth is warmed up and it is reflected back in the form of the heat energy. Now this reflected back heat energy, that is generally absorbed by these greenhouse gases, thus raising the temperature of the atmosphere. So, if we see which is the most responsible greenhouse gas that is responsible for the climatic changes, here you can see the first and foremost responsible gas is carbon dioxide. Then we have the other gases also, methane, oxides of uh, nitrogen, halogenated gases, other gases, and several aerosols which are responsible for the greenhouse gas and in turn responsible for the climatic changes. So let's start discussing one by one the key, or we can say the major greenhouse gases. The first and foremost important greenhouse gas is carbon dioxide, and mainly it is emitted through the burning of the fossil fuels like coal, oil, natural gas, which have a great use not only for the domestic purpose but for the industrial purpose also. So these burning of the fossil fuels for the energy and transportation releases carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Not only this, deforestation is also responsible. The several land use changes are taking place. Forests are generally cleared for the purpose of the expansion of the built-up area, industrial area, settlement area, etc. Thus, these land use changes are reducing the tree cover, the green spaces which are regarded as the carbon sinks, because these forests absorbs carbon dioxide. If it is cleared, its distribution reduces. Certainly the extent of the volume of carbon dioxide will increase. This greenhouse gas carbon dioxide traps heat in the atmosphere, leading to increased global temperature and more severe climatic events. It is also responsible for ocean acidification. Already we have discussed in biosphere, if you remember, student, elevated carbon dioxide levels are absorbed by the oceans, harming the marine ecosystem, coral reef, and thus reducing the biodiversity. The second important greenhouse gas is methane. If we see to its sources, generally the agricultural practices, particularly we can say in livestock, the enteric fermentation takes place. That is the fermentation in the intestines, mainly the digestive processes that takes place in different livestock, particularly the cows, that releases methane in the atmosphere. Not only this, the landfills where the organic matter or waste decomposes anaerobically, means in the absence of the oxygen, that emits methane in the atmosphere. Not only this, the natural gas extraction and the distribution releases methane in the atmosphere. And although the methane, if we see in amount, is less, but methane is 25 times more effective than carbon dioxide in trapping heat over 100 years period. So its potential for trapping heat is 25 times higher than the carbon dioxide. But the thing is, short-term warming takes place with methane, because methane's potency leads to significant short-term warming, which accelerates the climatic change impact despite its shorter atmospheric lifespan. So this is also one of the major greenhouse gas. Another important greenhouse gas is nitrous oxide, N2O. The source is from the agricultural activities, particularly the use of synthetic fertilizer, pesticides, insecticides. The livestock manure management also releases oxides of nitrogen. Various industrial processes also releases oxides of nitrogen. This nitrous oxide has a global warming potential. Just think, approximately 298 times that of CO2 over a century. 298 times that of CO2. You can see the potential of this oxides of nitrogen oxide for global warming. It also plays a very important role in ozone depletion. The nitrous oxides contributes to the depletion of the ozone layer, the layer which protects all the living being organism than the earth's surface from the harmful ultraviolet radiation. Another important gas is fluorinated gases. Fluorinated gases which contains fluorine. just like hydrofluorocarbons known as HFCs, perfluorocarbons known as PFCs, while sulfur hexafluoride SF6. So these are the synthetic gases which is generally used in the industrial applications, in domestic, for the domestic household assets, in refrigeration, air conditions, etc. So these are the major sources which release fluorinated gases to the atmosphere. Although present in the small quantities, these gases are extremely potent greenhouse gas with global warming potential 1,000 times as compared greater than the carbon dioxide. So just imagine it is 1,000 times greater than the carbon dioxide, and it has a long atmospheric lifespan, not just like the methane. So fluorinated gases can remain in the atmosphere for a long time, prolonging their warming effects and making them a significant concern for long time climate change. And now water vapor. Water vapor naturally it is naturally occurring in the atmosphere through the evaporation, transpiration, and plants. If you remember, transpiration we have discussed in the previous lecture, talking about the transpiration, the evaporation which takes place from the plants. Release of water vapor to the atmosphere by the plants is known as transpiration. So actually water vapor is naturally occurring in the atmosphere, but while it is one of the most abundant greenhouse gas, but it is not directly emitted by the human activities as compared to the fluorinated gases, carbon dioxide, etc. Instead, it acts as a feedback mechanism, increasing with higher temperatures caused by the other greenhouse gases. So these were the few of the major key greenhouse gases which we have discussed. Now this, how does these greenhouse gases work? For example, I have already said that the earth is heated by the sun energy, solar radiation. The sun emits, if you see, the sun emits energy in form of sunlight, that is solar radiation, which reaches the earth's surface. Now this radiation passes through the atmosphere and warms the earth's surface. As this radiation is having short wavelength, so much of it is scattered and remains in the atmosphere, and mainly it is scattered by the different particles, cloud covers, aerosols, etc. And much of it is also transferred through the atmosphere to the Earth's surface. Now, this radiation passes through the atmosphere and warms the Earth's surface. What happens after absorbing the sunlight? What happens? These infrared emissions take place. Means after absorbing the sunlight, the Earth's surface emits energy back into the atmosphere as infrared radiation, that is heat energy. The Earth radiates heat energy. Now it becomes long waves, not the short waves. Long. Now the role of greenhouse gases starts. These greenhouse gases, which are transparent for the short wavelength, but they trap this long wavelength, that is the radiated heat energy from the Earth's surface. The greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide in the atmosphere absorb some of this infrared radiation, and these gases have such a molecular structure that allow them to capture and hold on that heat energy, thus rising the atmospheric temperature. So this is how the greenhouse gases work. This is just the diagrammatic representation, students. Here you can see some of the solar radiation is reflected by, here you can see most solar radiation coming from the sun. Some of the solar radiation is reflected by the earth and the atmosphere. Most of the radiation is absorbed by the Earth's surface and warms the Earth's surface. And some of the infrared radiation passes through the atmosphere. Some is absorbed and re-emitted in all the directions by the greenhouse gas molecules. The effect of this is warm and the Earth's surface and the lower atmosphere. Thus, how the global warming takes place. Now, Already we have discussed few of the major greenhouse gases and their sources. We are going to discuss the sources of the greenhouse with different perspective. There are two types of sources related to the anthropogenic activities, that is human activities, and natural sources. If we talk about the human activities, the first and the foremost important source of the emissions of greenhouse gas is the burning of the fossil fuels. These fossil fuels, which includes coal, oil, and natural gas, are burned to generate energy for electricity, transportation, or for different industrial purposes. Thus, this process of burning of fossil fuels releases a significant amount of carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. And now, what will be the impact? It is one of the largest single contributor to global greenhouse gas emission. That's why we are working very much how to control the carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere, how to manage it. So these are mainly responsible for the most of the carbon dioxide released, driving global warming and the climate change. Another source due to the human activities is the deforestation. Simply, we can say the large scale clearing of the forest is termed as deforestation, mainly for the different purposes, either for the agriculture, either for the urban development, or for logging activities, etc. If we see to its emissions, trees generally we know that absorb carbon dioxide and they use it for photosynthesis in the presence of sunlight. And when they are cut down or burned, this stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Not only this, we also reduce by the deforestation, we reduce these forest cover, which are regarded as the carbon sink. So, it by reducing the Earth's natural capacity to absorb carbon, contributing significantly to the increase in the atmospheric carbon dioxide level. So, deforestation is also one of the major source of greenhouse gases. Another source related to the human activities in the industrial process, which is very much necessary for the development. We cannot stop development, but still we can manage it. So, industrial processes, manufacturing and processing activities of different units like cement production, chemical manufacturing, steel production, etc., they generally release carbon dioxide, fluorinated gases, and other greenhouse gases as byproduct of chemical reactions, or even we can say the energy use. These fluorinated gases used in the refrigeration industrial applications extremely potent with a global warming potential and thousands of times higher than the carbon dioxide. So thus industrial process also play a very important role. Natural sources. After the sources related to the human activities, we are going to discuss with the natural sources. First, foremost is the volcanic eruptions. Volcanoes release gases and particles into the atmosphere during the eruptions. And the volcanoes generally emit carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and water vapor. Carbon dioxide from the volcanic activity adds to the natural greenhouse gas concentration, although it can be said that the volcanic carbon dioxide emissions are much smaller than the human caused emissions, but still it contributes to the natural greenhouse gas levels. Another natural source are the wildfires, that is, uncontrolled forest or grassland fires that can be triggered naturally, either by the lightning or sometimes also by the human activities. So these wildfires release large amount of carbon dioxide, methane, and particulate matter into the atmosphere as organic material burns. And beside emitting greenhouse gases, wildfires also destroy the forest that act as a carbon sink, reducing the planet's ability to absorb carbon dioxide. Organic decomposition, the natural breakdown of organic material such as dead plants and animals by the microbes, is known as organic decomposition. During the decomposition, especially in oxygen poor environment that is known as anaerobic environment like wetlands or the landfills, organic matter release the methane, a potent greenhouse gas. This methane from the organic decomposition are very much significant, but the human activities like landfill waste and agriculture practices have increased methane emissions dramatically. So actually, where do these greenhouse gases come from? From the different sector. If we talk about its different percentages, we see 25% it mainly comes from the electricity and the heat sector, while 20.4% from the agriculture practices and land use changes, 17.9% from the industries, 14% from the transportation, 9.6% from the other forms of energy, 6.7% from the food waste, and 6.4% from the building. So this is where do the greenhouse gas emissions come from. If we see the both the human activities and the natural processes that contribute to the emission of the greenhouse gases, but human activities is particularly the burning of fossil fuels for different purposes, deforestation, are very much dominant drivers of climate change nowadays. So, in order to understand these sources, it becomes very important to develop the strategies to reduce the emissions and mitigate their impact on the environment. If we see the effects of greenhouse gases, whole soul, I can say the responsible factor for the global warming, that is effects. So that's why the first effect is the global warming, and it has various repercussions, just like rising temperature. The Earth's average surface temperature is increasing day by day. We know that due to the enhanced greenhouse effect caused by the human activities. Why? Because these gases trap more heat and thus rise in global temperature is observed, leading to the warmer climates all over worldwide. This warming affects different ecosystems, biodiversity, and human health, making certain regions more prone to heat waves and high temperatures. The second most repercussion of the global warming is melting of ice caps. Rising global temperature are responsible of melting of polar ice caps and the glaciers at unprecedented rate. The loss of these ice regions like Arctic and Antarctica contributes to rising sea levels, which reduces the habitats for the wildlife like polar bears, seals, and also leads to further warming as reflective ice surface are replaced by heat absorbing open water. Another repercussion of global warming is sea level rise as the ice caps are melting, warmer temperatures causing the ocean water to expand and thus the global sea level rise is observed. This rising sea levels is threatening the coastal communities, increasing the risk of the flooding and causing the loss of land in low-lying regions. This also affects the ecosystem such as the wetlands and the mangroves, which provide a crucial habitat and protects the shorelines. Another important effects of these greenhouse gas is the climate change, which is we can say mainly represented by extreme weather condition, droughts. The extreme weather condition as the greenhouse contribute more frequent and severe weather events can be seen in terms of the hurricanes, tornadoes, and storms. These storms become more intense with stronger winds and heavier rainfall and greater destructive power, which results in more damage, damaging the infrastructure, loss of life, and economic impacts on the affected region. Not only this, climate change also alters the water cycle, leading to more prolonged and severe droughts in various regions. These droughts reduce the availability of agriculture, drinking water, the water for the industrial use, which leads to food shortages, loss of crops, and increased competition for water resources, thus exacerbating social and economic problems. Not only this, the greenhouse gases, global warming, climate change. The changes in the precipitation patterns can be observed in terms of the distribution of the precipitation, in terms of the intensity of the rainfall, in terms of the seasons of the rainfall. Several shifts and anomalies have been observed. Some regions are experiencing more intense rainfall and flooding, while others are suffering from the shortage and water scarcity, which leads to the altered agricultural practices and productivity, thus affecting the food security and increasing the risk of natural disasters like landslides and floods. So, overall, sustainable practices to reduce the impact of greenhouse gases becomes very important. If we are able to understand what a greenhouse gas is and what are the sources of greenhouse gases, what is greenhouse gases, what is the role of the greenhouse gas in changing the climate of planet Earth. So, it also becomes very important in order to know about the sustainable practices which may reduce the emission of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The first and foremost such practice comes the energy efficiency. We must use or implement the energy efficient technologies, just like using LED for the lighting purpose, advanced heating system and improved insulations in the homes, industries and greenhouse in order to lower the greenhouse gas emission. Not only this, as we know that the forests are the major sink or where the carbon dioxide can be absorbed, and deforestation for various purposes is taking place at unprecedented rate. So we can proceed for reforestation and afforestation, which protects existing forests and plant new trees to act as a carbon sink, absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and mitigating the greenhouse effects. We should also proceed for the sustainable agriculture by using organic farming practices and reducing the use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, insecticide, and should also crop rotation should be promoted in order to lower methane and nitrous oxide emissions from the agriculture. One of the very important strategies, that is carbon capture and storage, that is one of the most advanced technology, CCS. Here what we should do, we have to invest in carbon capture and storage technology. What happens in this, it traps the carbon dioxide emissions from the power plants, different industrial processes, and after trapping carbon dioxide stores them underground, thus preventing them from entering to the atmosphere. And over and all, we know that as the burning of fossil fuels is the major driver of greenhouse gas and climate change. So replacing this fossil fuel based energy sources with the renewable energy like solar, wind, and hydroelectric power, this reduces the carbon dioxide emissions from the energy production. So these all strategies can play a very important role in reducing the emission of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So that's all for today's students. These are the references if you want to refer it for further with readings. So have a nice day. Thank you.